I'm not at all an analog purist. I really don't care how things are done. I just want to have fun doing it. I buy gear in two different ways. There is one, the necessities, mainly to play live, and also the pieces to connect all of the gear together. You end up always having to buy a MIDI multiplier and that kind of stuff. And then there is the gear that I see and it just seems so odd and so fun that I buy that because it's weird and I like it. I think that a lot of the music I make would not sound the same because sometimes there is so much unknown and unexpected things that happen when you play with hardware that it just has an impact. How I use Ableton changes, I would say, every 6 months, because then I discover a new way of doing things. And maybe if you ask me again in 6 months, my answer will be completely different. But currently, I try to do as much processing with actual hardware, and my sound sources are mostly from outside Ableton. I have like some synths here, and sometimes I even use my iPad. For example, there is like an emulation of the Model D synth, which costs perhaps 30 euros, the app. I honestly use whatever I can get my hands on, and I like to try new things and just discover new things because I like novelty, which is probably why I got into modulars, is that you can always, change the routing and then you come up with completely different sounds. And so new synths, new pathways for the electricity, and with the iPad, new apps. And I really like that it has touch screens, because with plugins, which sound the same if I were to use them on Ableton, it's a bit more tedious to use, and then I'm not having as much fun. The part that I'm currently the most excited about, and that has been the biggest change in how I work in the studio, has been to start using hardware compressors, EQs, and do my mixdowns no longer in Ableton. I mean, I do some leveling, but pretty much all that happens is outside of the computer. And this is, for me, really interesting because it completely changed the sound. And before, when I was doing my mixdowns, I overused Pro Q. I was going to hunt for all of the resonances and all of the tracks, and I had so many different channels. And now I'm really trying to have a much more pure sound with fewer tracks that just really work well together, and then I gel them together through hardware that really bring the sounds more to life. The big difference really for me in terms of mixing is that I never use my eyes. I mean, I try not to use my eyes anymore, because everything that happens, I mean, I would have some LED maybe on some units, but that's pretty much it. And it's all based on how it sounds. And I also changed that. Before, I wanted to have something as, in your face, loud, and that sounded as professional as possible. And now I think that I just want it to sound unique, and I'm not thinking, oh, it has to sound amazing in the club necessarily. I just think that it has to have a good energy by itself, and then normally, you don't need smashing kick drums. Like, you can have a track with so much energy, and that would also work so well on a dance floor, but that would not be considered like a perfect mixdown because it's too unique to sound like everything else. I think with music making, it's really a matter of personality, and some people love the control that plugins give you and how everything can be so neat and perfect. And I like the happy accidents and the imperfections from hardware. and the really hands-on approach where even if you don't know how this thing is working, you can just try things out and see and try to guess how it's working on the inside by using it. Whenever I got a module, I would always watch tutorials on how to use it to get ideas. And now I'm more trying to not watch any tutorials for as long as possible, just to try to guess and see what I come up with. And then if I'm stuck or if I know that it's a very, very deep piece of equipment and that I'm obviously missing out on some things, then I'll watch some tutorials. But I always now try to really figure it out by myself so that it's more me who's using it instead of a person on YouTube. My point is that if you're going to spend the money that you're spending on modulars, it has to sound different from something you would do with plugins or with more cheap and simple hardware, because otherwise you're just wasting your money. And another thing that I never understand is sometimes you see people's systems and they have all of their cables with wire knots between them, you know, like cable management so that it's easy to see. But I always unplug everything and start new. And I never understand people who commit so hard to a pathway that they're gonna glue it, well, not glue it, it's Velcro, but they're gonna Velcro it, because I think, how long do you stay with the same setup? Because I can't, I have to unplug and start new, and then it's a really, you know, maybe you keep the same patch for one EP, but then if you wanna do another EP, you unplug everything and you start new. I have quite a few sequencer modules. I have some that are very straightforward that I would use live. So this would be my BitStep Pro if I want to save space in my rack, or then a circuit in rhythm. And then when I'm in the studio, I can do more weird stuff, because when you're in the studio, it's okay if you have quite some nonsense, as long as you have a good 1 minute in your 20 minutes, that's what you want, which obviously you cannot do on stage.
As you can see, I'm totally fucked up.
The last piece of equipment I got was a Lyra 8, and I really, really like it. It just sounds so full, and it's really fun. It's also quite weird. I use it with a looper because it moves a lot, and then I cut chunks of it, and then it sounds really interesting. You layer it below a kick drum, and it has such a nice energy to it.